When you go before a judge pro se, one of the first things they most often say to you is, I am not going to go easy on you. I'm not going to give you any special treatment. You're not going to be able to shortcut the procedural rules. You're going to be treated as if you were an attorney or if you were represented by one. There is no winning in family court, so I don't really tell people I'll help you win. What I do tell people is it's the experience itself that will decimate you. The family court experience itself will destroy you. I am here to help you get through that without being destroyed. You cannot, nor should you, rely 100% on AI if you're self-representing and without doing your research, without verifying things, without understanding its limitations. But a good 80% of litigants in family court are pro se at some point in their case because, it's family court is a never-ending saga, right? Did you ever stop to find out what the laws are in your state? Because if the laws in your state are automatic 50-50 or presumed 50-50, you're basically throwing money out the window. So many of them don't even start there. Number one, you're going to save at least $8,000 to $10,000 starting off on your own. Easily. And a lot of times that $8,000 to $10,000 is wasted when you hire a lawyer.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Just Separated podcast. I'm Karen Omand, a thanatologist, grief counselor, divorce strategist, and co-author of the Just Separated workbook. I help people navigate the emotional, legal, and practical challenges of divorce, including high conflict and narcissist relationships. Each week, I am joined by expert guests to share guidance, tools, and strategies so you can move forward with clarity, confidence, and resilience. Follow Just Separated and join us as we explore the many layers of divorce. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Welcome to the Just Separated podcast. I'm your host, Karen Omand, co-founder of Divorce Workshop. Today, we're going to talk about self-represented in family court, and our expert guest is Tracey Bloodsaw. Tracey is a former law attorney turned pro se family court strategist, changing the way self-represented are perceived and making family court process easier to navigate and helping people get more wins in their divorce and custody cases. Welcome, Tracey, to the Just Separated podcast.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
It's an honor. Tracey, I'm curious, what was the moment you realized that there was this need for pro se coaching? Was there a specific client or case that made you think people need a different kind of help than just traditional family law?
Yeah, actually, when I was in private practice, a lot of people were coming to me and they couldn't afford, either they couldn't afford me flat out or they could afford the initial retainer. And then at some point they were forced to self-represent because they couldn't continue to pay, because especially in those high conflict cases where they can drag on for several months, even years, it's really, really common for people to run out of money. So when I was in private practice, about 10 years into it, I actually started working on this pro se aspect of my business before I stopped practicing. Because of that, I always been dedicated to helping people, especially who I call the underdog, and providing services to help people. And so this has always been in the making. But yeah, it was not too long into my work as a private practitioner did I realize that, yeah, there's a really, really big need for services that are geared specifically toward pro se. And don't get me wrong, there are organizations that do it. And sometimes some attorneys still work for free, which is really not happening these days. But I wanted something a little bit more nuanced where it would empower people by choosing to be pro se as well. So I took it a little step further and I decided to create the Divorce Solutionist as a result of that.
So for our listeners, can you just explain what is pro se?
Pro se is self-representing. That's me. And actually people, different states and different venues, they call it something different, but pro se, pro per, self-representation is exactly what it means. It means that you're actually going to court and you're advocating for yourself and you're doing all the legwork and the research and the filings and et cetera, et cetera. There's no attorney actually what's called on the record that the court can refer to on your behalf. It's entirely you. Now you can still work with an attorney, but when you're pro se or self-representing, you're representing to the court that you are advocating for yourself.
I'm assuming, and I'm not, and I don't like that word, but that the courts probably don't really like pro se. Is that
They don't.
correct?
They don't. They don't. They part of what I do now is working at changing that. Yeah, they don't like it for a lot of reasons. It does put a burden on the court system in a lot of respects, and it does create more of problems, more of a sometimes more of a high conflict situation, particularly for the key players in court. So the courts don't usually support that, but everybody has the constitutional right to do exactly that, except in criminal that's a little different because there's a little bit more at stake there. But yeah, courts don't really, they're not really sanguine about self-representation.
So you mentioned costs, right? And that was in my own situation. I had to do that for costs as well. But is there any other reasons why someone would go pro se?
Oh yeah, that's a huge movement right now, especially like, anti-family court um activists, activists, there are dad advocate groups. There are a lot of people now, which I've had the privilege of meeting and working with a lot of people who are choosing to self-represent because they just don't trust lawyers, they don't trust the process, and they'd rather do things on their own. And a lot of them, they might have started out with lawyers. Very few of them started out as pro se by choice, but a lot of them have started out working with lawyers and got a taste of what it's like, and they're just not a fan, and they think that they can do a better job themselves. And believe it or not, a lot of them do a better job themselves. So yeah, there are a lot of people now. There's a whole section, a whole group, a whole movement of people choosing to self-represent in family court. Yes.
So what is it like for someone that, like, example, like myself, who had a lawyer and then cost prohibited? How does that person transition into doing it on their own? It is not as easy to be. I mean, you guys have so much schooling, the family law is complicated. So how's that transition like for most people?
Well, you definitely start off with research. You absolutely have to commit a significant amount of time to doing your research, right? You should not make that transition without doing it. And I see people doing that a lot. They'll tell me, hey, I have to self represent. Can you tell me A, B, C, and D? And what does this mean? And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. If you decided by force or by choice to self-represent, the first thing you need to do is your own research. You absolutely have to do research. That means going to the court's website and reading everything you can read on there. That means going to YouTube and watching videos. That means listening to podcasts, buying books. You have to do research. And then what's more important than the law is the court procedure. You have to understand your specific court's procedure with respect to being pro se, because some courts are a little bit more strict with the process of self-representing. Some courts, you have to actually file an official document to let the court know that that's what you intend on doing. And in some courts you don't, but you need to know exactly what the procedure entails. But yes, it definitely should start with doing a lot of research to understand exactly what you're getting yourself into. Trying to figure it out along the way is not the way to do it. Not at all.
Is there, I remember, I'm just thinking of all the forms, because there's a lot of forms that have to be filled out, and that is all timing as well in the family court.
Yes, the forms. Most states, courts, especially in the United States, have the forms or have some version of the forms on their website. Now, most of them are free. If they don't, a lot of states have organizations that have the forms on their website. And if that doesn't work, then what I suggest people do is go to neighboring counties or sometimes even neighboring states to use customize them, of course, to use their forms to file. But if you need help with filling out the forms, some states courts actually have an advocate or some sort of person or some sort of system that will help you complete the forms. They don't give legal advice. Some of them do have attorneys assisting free, but they will help you fill out the forms. But yes, there are a lot of forms. You absolutely need to, understand what the forms look like. That's why I suggest people, even when they think that there's a possibility of them going pro se, even if they're going to keep a lawyer, it's still their responsibility to go to the court's website and just familiarize yourself with the forms, with terms, with the procedures, with the process, just to know. You should be an informed, proactive litigant. Whether you're represented or not, that's your responsibility. And a lot of people in this field, they wind up deferring completely to an attorney, which is a problem. But a lot of them will have an attorney and they won't take responsibility for their part, their role they play, and they wind up, getting dismal results. No different than a pro se litigant. It's the same thing. If you're going to give 100% control to a lawyer and trust them to do everything, and you know nothing, then you're no better off than someone who self-represents. You might as well self-represent, right? Because it's still your responsibility to know, to be informed about every step along the way. It's absolutely your responsibility to do that.
Why do you think we do that? Like, why do you think that society just, is it laziness? Is it just fear-based? Is it just because I know it's like, you handle it all. I don't want to handle this. And what you're saying is so accurate. If you were getting surgery for something, most of us would go, okay, let's look into that. What's going to happen? What's my recovery going to be like? What drugs do I have to take? We would, you know what I mean? And divorce is huge. Like, it's a huge, so do you have any, is it any reasons
Yes.
of why?
Yes. Number one, it's intimidating. It's intimidating. That's why lawyers are still, to some degree anyway, regaled, because it's like, oh, you managed to master understanding the law and to apply it. So it's intimidating. It is. And it is intimidating to even to me, to learn a new field of law. It can be overwhelming. Then mixed in with the emotions, right? Divorce is emotional. It's traumatic. It's downright traumatic for some. So couple that with the, intimidation. And yes, you do want to hand over the responsibility, the control entirely to someone else you think is more equipped to do that. But should you? That's the question.
So what is the biggest mistakes that you have seen in your journey with people that have gone pro se?
That they expect the court to handhold them. They expect grace. They expect a pass, and they're not. That it's the total opposite. When you go before a judge pro se, one of the first things they most often say to you is, I am not going to go easy on you. I'm not going to give you any special treatment. You're not going to be able to shortcut the procedural rules. You're going to be treated as if you were an attorney or if you were represented by one. So, and a lot of pro se think that, it's the total opposite. And that is one of the biggest mistakes that people make that I've seen. In addition to not doing their research, I'm on social media because I like to interact with pro se litigants to see what their mindset is. And I see often they'll come on social media and say, hey, how do I file this? Or, hey, how do I make my argument for this? Or, hey, how do I organize my evidence? And I'm like, you should not be asking this. If you don't know these things, you probably shouldn't be doing pro se. You probably should not be pro se. If this is your source of research, social media, a group of non-lawyers who are, they only have their own experience to give you from, advice from, then you probably should rethink this whole pro se thing. So you absolutely have to familiarize yourself and acquaint yourself with the process. Again, go to your court's website and start there. And there's so much resources out there now. ChatGPT is excellent, and Perplexity and Claude, they're excellent now with helping explain things. They're not good for giving legal advice or strategic advice, but they're really good at actually helping you position your emotions or master your emotions and get things organized so that you are better able, and even to answer some questions about what something means. There's too many resources out there now for you to not know exactly what you're talking about. And I see that happen often. And then people will come back to me and say, hey, this is what happened in court because this is what I did. And I'm like, well, you should not have done that. You should have done your own legwork and your own research to find that out. You should understand what goes along with being pro se before you step into a courtroom pro se.
Let's just talk about emotions for a bit, because we know emotions is a huge part of divorce, right? It's what we always say, legal's 5%, emotions like the 95%. How do you coach people in pro se to handle those emotions, especially if they're going in front of another lawyer or a judge and the other lawyer?
It's funny because I'm big on that. I'm big on because I'm a strategic, I'm a critical thinking, problem solving. That's my expertise. So the emotional part is not my forte, but to get them there sometimes I have to really give some emphasis to the emotional. So I will suggest to them that they have a mental health therapist to work with, right? If they are, especially if they're, a trauma survivor, I always suggest that they find somebody who is capable to help them work through that, because I get a lot of people who have PTSD, and when they have PTSD, it's hard for them to even think, on a day-to-day basis, let alone think strategically and problem solve and use those critical thinking skills. But it's essential for what the work that I do with them. They need to get to that space, right? So I do suggest that. And then sometimes I will step in. My background is in psychology. So before I went to law school, that's what I did, which is why I love doing this in this role now. So there's some exercises that I will suggest that they do, and some resources I would suggest that they do. But the one thing that I work with them personally is I do some role playing. We do some practice exercises where we actually work on, calming that nervous system down. I'm not a mental health therapist or any kind of professional, but I do know some practices and some exercises that any layman can work with. And I'm big on that. I'm big on the practicing and the role playing and just reminding them to integrate certain exercises into their day to day, to ensure that they are working on that. Because and some people I will just flat out reject. I will say, you're not in a space to work with me right now because you are still in the emotional state that's counterintuitive to where I need you to be to actually think clearly. And yeah, and I've been doing that for the past year or so. Before I used to think, oh, I can help anybody, I can save anybody, I can do this. But real reality set in, and I realized that no, some people, and it's no affront, it doesn't mean that we can't work together ever. It just means that sometimes they're not in that space. If they've just gotten served, or they just gotten in the midst of the divorce or custody conflict process, I genuinely try not to work with them, because they're really in that shock phase, and they're still in the disbelief. They're not comprehending anything that we're working on. So it's counterintuitive. It's counterproductive for both of us. So yeah.
Would you suggest that people start off with pro se?
Yes. It's funny because I was just talking about that today. Start off with pro se, yes, because what that means is you're just getting the thing started. It's good for so many reasons. Number one, you're gonna save at least $8,000 to $10,000 starting off on your own, easily. And a lot of times the $8,000 to $10,000 is wasted when you hire a lawyer. It's so many people have come to me and say, hey, I've spent $25,000 in the past 6 months and we haven't even made it to court yet. And I'll say to them, because you could have done that $25,000 worth of work, you could have done that yourself and saved yourself that. And you know what I'm saying? So you're not front loading your resources. So I think it's really smart to do it that way. As I said, the forms are available, the information is available. You can do it, and even going to your first court appearance pro se is not a bad idea if you're not intimidated by the other party or the courtroom in and of itself, because now you can get a lay of the land, and you can go back and start to use that to look for an attorney if that's what you choose to do. You have that information now. You have a complete picture to go back and start your search for an attorney. But also, it's empowering. It's empowering if you start on your own and you learn all this information that you need to know, and then you go and meet with an attorney or a few attorneys. You feel like when you're having a discussion with these prospective attorneys now, you feel a little bit more confident. You're more enlightened. You're more empowered because you've done that part. So now it's not that dynamic where the attorney is this deity and they're going to tell you exactly what you need to do and you're going to listen to everything that they say. Now you sort of level the playing field and you feel a little bit more empowered to have some input, some constructive input, and get some productive output from meeting with these prospective attorneys. So, of course. And then the third thing is sometimes you wind up settling sooner if you start up pro se. because if depending on who the other party is, if you jump right out the gate with an attorney, they automatically assume they have to go and get an attorney. And now what might have been a low conflict situation became a high conflict one, because now you're talking about attorneys. Attorneys make things more conflict, high conflict than they need to be a lot of times. And so sometimes it says that. And you can start out being pro se, but still having a few consultations with attorneys, or working with a limited scope attorney, or having someone like myself, walk you through the process. Being pro se is not necessarily doing it all by yourself. You can be pro se and still have someone guide you and assist you and support you along the way.
I think that's the biggest myth. Like when you said that, like when you think pro se, you're like, I'm all by myself. I'm going against this lawyer in this big courtroom with the four walls and this big judge. But what you're saying is you don't have pro se doesn't mean that there's not someone like you, mental health, a team, but just a different team than what normal society wants, right? Is having
Yes.
the lawyer.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So do you see more men, women doing pro se, or women? Like, is it mixed?
It's men. A lot of men. A lot of men. A lot of men are not trusting lawyers and not trusting the family court process overall. And so they feel like, they have that machismo mentality where they feel like they can do it better themselves. So a lot of men will take the initiative and actually go and self-represent quicker than women do. Women are still, of the belief that, no, I can't do this on my own. There's no way I can possibly outwit or outmaneuver opposing counsel or my ex or the court. And so, yeah, a lot of men will choose to go that route.
So if someone has like you in their corner, a coach, whatever, like say just a divorce coach and you and whatever, is there a decent success rate of doing it on your own?
Yes. Yes, I've helped people, win. There's no winning in family court, but I've helped people accomplish their goals. Since I've been doing this, and I started in 2020, I've helped quite a few people. They've come back to me and say, hey, let me tell you what the results are. I have a few poster children that I actually refer people to talk to let them know how what I've done with them. And again, they've had other divorce professionals assist them along the way. Some of them have had limited scope attorneys work with them. But yeah, I've helped people accomplish their goals. There is no winning in family court. So I don't really tell people, I'll help you win. What I do tell people is it's the experience itself that will decimate you. The family court experience itself will destroy you. I am here to help you get through that without being destroyed. So by the time the overall outcome is upon you, you won't feel completely wiped out, completely hopeless, completely helpless. You've taken some active role in getting to that outcome. You've shifted your mindset, you've done things, you've become more knowledgeable, and so that experience itself is priceless. So that's what I focus on, the experience of making the family court experience much more bearable than if you are pro se without my help.
I'm also thinking of all of us that did it and we were quite naive to all of it. And I think what you're saying is like the exhaustion, the experience, having someone like you could really have helped me and many others that have tried to do this on their own.
Yes.
So I think your service is definitely necessary. Is there a percentage that that people do go pro se? Like, is there a common, like I know a lot of people do end up going pro se, right? Because they just can't,
Yes.
many reasons like we talked about before, but do you have an idea?
In family court, almost it depends on which data source you refer to, but a good 80% of litigants in family court are pro se at some point in their case, because it's family court is a never ending saga, right? You think you're done, and then another year or two goes by and you're being hauled back into court. So at some point, yes, a good 80%, especially since the pandemic happened, that the numbers skyrocketed since the pandemic happened because people are like, I need to get out of this marriage or this relationship because I've been stuck home with them for, X amount of years and I hate them. And so, but I don't have the money because, couldn't work. So a lot of people have, used that time to say, you know what, I'm going to go out there and do it on my own and get this ball rolling because I have to do it. So yeah, there's a good portion of people, especially the ones who are self-representing by choice, that has skyrocketed in the last maybe year or two, where I see people who are like, don't get a lawyer. Like they're telling other people, hey, don't get a lawyer. Let me tell you all the reasons why not to get a lawyer and why you can do this. Of course, they leave some vital information out, like referring them to me, but that's another story. But yeah, there are a lot of people now. I don't know what the percentage is for that, but it's way more than what it was when I started 5 years ago.
Do you think people are just tired of the high costs of lawyers?
That too. That too. Yes, because, I had to explain to people why lawyers charge so much. And let me tell you something, family law attorneys are not getting rich by practicing family law at all. A lot of them are doing it because they have a passion or they had one at one point. Or they just, fell into it and never left it because it's hard to segue into another field of law once you've been in family law for so long. But yeah, but lawyers have to charge what they charge because they have to. They're not getting the volume. They're not getting especially now. They're not getting the volume, and we have student loan debt. So with factored in with the overhead, because you have to have a legal support staff to operate an office, whether no matter how big or small it is, and but yeah, but people are tired of it. They're like, hey, family law attorneys have the highest dissatisfaction rate in the industry. And that's not by accident. It's because, a lot of people are like, hey, I need this lawyer to do all these things, to be all these things to me because I paid them $25,000. And the lawyer's like, I'm not all those things. And that $25,000 is because they're calling me and emailing me about things that have nothing to do with. So they have to be billed. So it's, but yeah, a lot of people, yeah, they're just done with paying high priced lawyers for especially doing things that they can do on their own, especially with the emergence of AI right now.
Is there any, when you have children and you self-represent, is there any tips that you can tell those prosayers with their co-parenting?
Oh yeah, I often suggest people get a co-parenting coach because, believe it or not, a lot of the reasons why people's cases wind up being not only high conflict, but perpetual, meaning they're constantly back in court, is because they don't have a means, they don't have a method, they don't have a process of communicating effectively with the co-parent, right? Judges do not want to micromanage co-parenting relationships, period. Just because there are motions out there you can file to bring the other parent back to court doesn't mean you should. And that's one sure way to really, get a judge to not favor you, to not like you, is to continuously file motions every time your co-parent does something they're not supposed to do. So get a co-parenting coach, please. Get a co-parenting coach, get a parent coordinator, get someone, even a religious official or someone who's going to help you serve as who's going to be a mediator or intermediary between your co-parenting, because there's no way you're ever going to get a judge to side with you and stop the other party, the other parent, from doing exactly what they continuously do that just drives you nuts. It's not going to happen. So yes, I don't actually get involved with the co-parenting stuff because it's just it's a rabbit hole. It never ends. I focus on, hey, let's focus on managing that. Let's focus on getting that under control to the point where it's not driving you insane and it's not affecting your ability to think strategically from this point on. And so yes, I will have people refer to a co-parenting coach or someone like that in a minute because of that. I mean,
Yeah,
there are
isn't
apps and things like that that'll help, but yeah, it's better to have that person. I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. Isn't it high, like one of the reasons why um, their high conflict is because of custody issues?
Yes, a lot of the high conflict cases is because of custody. Most of them are, as a matter of fact, which is why I think too, if people understand, what surprises me every single day is the number of people that don't even know their custody laws in their state. And it blows my mind when people come and say, hey, I'm fighting for sole custody because my soon-to-be ex-husband was just a hands or ex-wife is has always been hands off, and I've been a primary caretaker, so I want sole custody, and I'm fighting for it, and I'm spending all this money, and I'm like, well, did you ever stop to find out what the laws are in your state? Because if the laws in your state are automatic 50-50 or presumed 50-50, you're basically throwing money out the window. So many of them don't even start there. And that sometimes the attorneys won't tell them that, because the attorneys, hey, they're like, hey, this is a money source. Why should I? So if you find that out, then you'll save yourself the heartache, right? But so many people will go into these high conflict custody situations not really needing to. Not to mention, if they get somebody, like I said, a co-parenting coach, a mediator, a parent coordinator, somebody like that, someone specifically with a mental health background, it would help keep a lot of the conflict down and the costs down and the stress down. But so many people just rather run right to court and do all the filings without even thinking about the fact that, there's some laws that might serve as the premise, as the basis for this. And there may be other ways, other avenues to avoid this, litigious route that we're about to embark on.
Are there any couples that, like, anyone who's listening that probably shouldn't do pro se?
Yes. If you are, you have, I hate to put it this way, but if you have severe mental health issues, you should not be pro se. If you are a trauma survivor in a severe DV case, or you have severe DV background, you should not self-represent. If you are completely on your own, you have no resources, you have very little time, and you have very little ability to concentrate and focus, you should not be pro se. Those are the ones who should almost never be pro se. It can change, so they should self-evaluate every now and again. But for the most part, if you're any of those three, you should not self-represent. And people who are where English is their second or third language, no, pro se is probably not the best route for them either.
So before we wrap up, and I ask my last question, is there anything that we missed?
We covered a lot. Yes, we covered a lot. I mean, I want to say, because I am big, and I'd be remiss to not mention this, especially since a lot of pro se are relying on AI. AI is a really helpful tool. It has to be used correctly and responsibly. You cannot, nor should you, rely 100% on AI if you're self-representing, and without doing your research, without verifying things, without understanding its limitations. Yes, AI is a huge help for self-represented. But again, you have to use it responsibly. You have to be responsible in the way you use it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are using that though, and I think it's really good. As a lawyer, you're saying you can use it, but it's not for advice, legal advice, and it's not strategy, right? But it is a tool. One of the tools, just like your mental health, just like your divorce coach, just like parent coordinator, use AI as a tool. So
yes.
Great. So I ask everyone before we wrap up this question. For someone who just separated, whether they left or were left, what advice would you give them to help them navigate those overwhelming early days?
You know what I think is really important at that time? Establishing a support system. That is really important. A reliable, dependable support system, whether that be family, friends, a group. You should get that support. In addition, because that's the emotional part that's going to be at a high at this point, right? You want to sort of start to address that. If that's a therapist, a coach, whomever, you need a support system. You're going to have a lot of emotions, a lot of questions, a lot of concerns and fears. You should definitely address them as much as you can, as early on as you can.
Yeah, that's great advice. It actually very important for even if you left, you still need
even
that
if you
support.
left. Exactly.
Yeah, people think, oh, yes. I left, and no, you still need all the support
absolutely.
you can get.
You sure do.
So you have your own podcast, and whereabouts, if you want to talk about that a minute, and where can they get in touch with you and all your webpage and all that good stuff?
Yes, I have my podcast. It's reformatting for January 2026, but it is called Self Represented in Family Court. That's where I discuss all strategy about self representing. But if you're a lawyer represented, you'll find some gems there as well. So it's on Spotify, Apple, and I believe Google as well. My website is thedivorcesolutionist.com. There you can find out everything about how I help people who are self represented and lawyer represented, because a lot of people that I've worked with in the past year had lawyers. You can find me on social media again at the Divorce Solutionist. Yeah.
Well, Tracey, I wanted to have you on because I find that this is one of the most important topics in the legal section of divorce because so many people do it, right? Including myself and others. And so I have said this so many times with all my guests, but I wish I had someone like you when I was going through my own process. So please reach out to Tracey. And as you said, Tracey, even if you have your own lawyer, but you want another, strategy or another objective, call Tracey, just get her strategy on and say, okay, because your lawyers are good, but maybe you need some more advice or something. So
Absolutely.
thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining today's conversation with our divorce expert. Check out the show notes for more about our guests, and don't forget to follow us on Spotify and our YouTube channel at divorceworkshop.ca. We'd love to hear from you. Share your questions, comments, or guest suggestions. And for a complete guide to navigating separation and divorce, check out the Just Separated workbook on Amazon. It covers emotions, co-parenting, finances, legal insights, and recovery. A must-have for anyone going through separation or divorce.